and we'll get started. And again, thank you for coming. And please enjoy the ribs and the chicken and
more tray. Of course.
Well, first of all, I just want to, when Yusef called me and asked me to do this, it was a no-brainer for me. I have so much respect for this young man and what he's doing for our people, for this city. And there's a passage in the Bible that says that a prophet is without honor in his own homeland amongst his own kindred. And the city of Detroit really doesn't realize what prophetic anointing this young man has on him. You know, I think we get so caught up whether somebody use bad language or not, as opposed to hearing the message of the messenger and hearing your heart. So I know Dennis gave us some ground with this. But I gave one ground with it.
I gave it to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I've been known to let one rip every now and then. But this conversation is very important. These conversations have to be replicated across the city of Detroit. I'm excited. I know people are excited about what's going on downtown, midtown, all these casinos and stadiums and sports teams. But the reality is, until young black men start to have a chance to survive in the community, particularly in our neighborhoods, it's all window dressing. It's lipstick on a pig. So with that, Yusef, I just want to hear your heart. What do we need to do as black men? Now, the interesting part about this is a former Zone 8 member and a former cop. And we're sitting here talking about solutions for black men, particularly in Detroit. But this is an epidemic across the country. So talk to me, Yusef, about what you think we need to do, how you address that in your writings, and where we go from here.
Thank you to everybody that's coming out. Thank you for Classic Kids Box for hosting us. Dennis doing a great job organizing. I just got back this morning. I was in Rochester, New York, and I had a great opportunity to go back out there and speak in the district out there in the school. And they assigned the so-called bad school for me to go in, and I showed my film, and it was like 7th and 9th graders, and there was this one student in particular that the staff wanted him to be there. He was going through a lot of social challenges, not showing up, and after we watched the film, there was actually different questions, and he had asked me, did I have a question for them, and I was like, what do y'all think about the film? Is it familiar to you, to like the road trip? And he was like, man, that's my life story. But the only thing, I could see a different ending now versus what I saw. And so the solution is us giving a damn. It's real simplistic. Love has to be a part of it. The love that's missing within the hearts of a lot of young men, and a lot of young men are beginning to be scapegoats for the problems. I think it's enough blame to go around, and I think at the end of the day, until we come out of our own pockets and come out of our own hearts and start doing, that's the only way that we can change these things. The next day, I was talking to a group of young men. And when I was in Rochester, they were celebrating the 50th anniversary of the riots. And many of them like, man, riot, I didn't know it had a riot. So, and the part of that is not having no historical continuity of who we are. And so it's easy for me to be a zone man. It's easy for me to sell dope because I have no responsibility to my community in a positive, productive way. And so for me to reflect good in my community, good has to be within front of me.
Now, I know the folks here probably know your story, but this is being recorded. Many don't. But this is being recorded also. And Yusef, briefly, take us from being a young man, Zone 8, going to prison, who you are now. For those that don't know your story, why don't you let us know what's going on?
The 2-minute version. By the age of 13, I get kicked out of every Detroit public school I went to. I co-founded the gang Zone 8. By the age of 15, my mother made me a ward of the state because she had felt like she had no control over me. And that decision was made to save me from myself. By the age of 17, I tried to kill myself, coming home from the training school, wanting to do good, but not addressing the internal issues that was inside of me. And just really at that time, I felt like a Vietnam vet coming from Vietnam. I'm just like, what do? I'm just tired of gangbanging, but there was no outlet. So let me just take my life. By the age of 19, I ended up going to prison for a crime I didn't do. Even though I was innocent of that crime, I was guilty of being a gang member. I was guilty of being a predator in my community, things that nature. By the age of 20, I met my father in prison. And that relationship that we developed in prison had a tremendous impact on the relationship that helped shape who I am. When I tell the story, I always say I met my father for the first time. And I stated like that because I knew of him prior to going to prison, but I knew of him as a sperm donor. I knew of him as a guy that said, I'm going to do this and do that and don't do anything. But as a father, that's who I met in prison. That's who nurtured me. The same thing that you would get in the household, in your community, that's what I got from my father in prison. I served 9 years. I've been home out of prison 13 years. I've graduated from college and written a couple of books. I was fortunate enough to own and operate Urban Network Bookstore for 4 years, right in zone. We do an annual back to school supply event. We have the house now that we're raising money for to take that idea, that model, and place it over there. So at the end of the day, man, there's a lot more to it, but none of that means nothing if I can't impact my community.
Let me stop you there. What motivates Yusef every day? I mean, you see cats out here that's the only grind, they shine, but you still want to get down and get with folks and bring folks up. What motivates you to do that every day?
Like I was about to say, all the social prestige that I've been able to acquire doesn't mean nothing if I can't impact my neighborhood in a positive, productive way. Because in reality, there's still JoJo's in my neighborhood, and that's where I used to be. There's still Ava Jo's, which is my mother, who is struggling. How do I raise my son? Who she feel like she's losing that battle to the streets. So who's better equipped to go back within that environment than those of us who come out of it? And particularly speaking to black people, that has always been our commitment, our obligation of helping each other. And I think once we stop pulling that ladder for us to climb, and we cut it off, we see the lopsidedness in our community of not having resources, which the resource of love, the resource of care. And when those things left, violence came in, hurt came in, pain came in, and those things are a recipe for destruction that we see every day, particularly in our youth. There's no one there to love them and nurture them.
You mentioned meeting your father in prison and the impact that had on you. Can you just talk us through how you feel the absence of fathers, particularly when baby mama and baby daddy beefing, and they use the kids in the middle of it and not let that father be a part? Talk about the impact of not having a father, but then how that changed you having a father.
I mean, not having a father in my life, or a father figure. The drug dealers, the gangsters, the streets became my father. They became the folks that nurtured me. I can vividly remember when my grandmother takes me to visit my father, and I'm about 15 years old, he asked me that question, what do you want to be? And I said strongly, with much pride, I want to be the biggest dope dealer in the city of Detroit. Because those were the guys I was hanging with. So they feel that void. I can remember, one time we're hanging out, and it turns into the murder gang. Right. It's the first time I witnessed this, and I told this story recently. Like, retaliation came from that. So with me being the youngest, I was like the oddball. So he had to say something. So they came back and they pistol whipped me. But the strange thing about it was I was more afraid of losing their companionship as father figures than dying, because that was my relationship that I had to them, and it tore my relationship with my mother, because even though she loved me, she couldn't be a father to me. She couldn't be that man. And so then you look at the internal dynamics of seeing the conflict. I remember watching my mother fight the different guys that she was with, and none of them was there for me. None of them was there for my sister. They was there for my mother, for a sexual reason or whatever. And you could feel that. And as a child, it plays out in a negative way. And so you begin to withdraw. And your mother, she just trying to keep the bills going, doing her part. But here's a child, you're trying to be responsible. You're trying to help out, but there's little things that you can do. So it stagnates your development. When you're in school, you're too busy worrying about mama to be even focused on schoolwork. So it prevents you from excelling mentally, spiritually, as a human being.
Obviously, there's been a spiritual awakening in you that's just dynamic. For those people that don't know what your name means, in the African American community, we're storytellers. Our names used to mean something. Tell us what your name means.
I was given, my mother gave me the name Joseph Lee Ruffin. Joseph was in honor of my grandfather. So in changing my name, Yusef and Joseph is the same name, just in different dialects. So I kept that name in honor of my grandfather and honor of my mother. Bunchy is my middle name. Took that name in honor of Bunchy, Al Princess Bunchy Carter. He was a founding member of the LA chapter of the Black Panther Party. Again, when we look at a lot of our lives, many of us are reliving someone else's life. Bunchy Carter, he was a high-ranking member of the gang in LA called the Slossons. He was considered the mayor of the Slossons. The way the story goes, he was just a dynamic, incredible brother. He ended up going to prison, transformed his life, he comes home, and he's doing community work. When I read about him and upon my journey of transformation, like, man, that's me. That's the guy I want to be like. I don't want to be like Doc Strange no more. I don't want to be like Saul no more, the guys that was selling dope. I want to be a change agent like Bunchy. Shakur, again, Tupac made that name very popular. But before there was a Tupac, there was a Matula Shakur, a Stala Shakur, a Phoenix Shakur, a Woodward. So that name is a movement name, but also means thankful to God. So my whole name means honorable soldier, thankful to God. So I remember a couple years ago, I ran into somebody who hadn't seen me since I've been home, and she's like, I thought you was dead. And I was like, no, I'm not dead. Right. I'm still alive. And she remembered, she was like, me and my mom, when we used to see you, we would cross the street. Right. It was like hell was coming. And when I reflect,
in a way, a part of you did die, and there's a resurrection. Talk about that resurrection.
Yeah, absolutely. JoJo, in a sense, he died, or putting to rest, should I say, in that sense, because he's still there, and he still want to come out sometimes. But yeah, it's like my father taught me about the importance of discipline. And it's the most significant thing, the change in my life and those who have similar life stories to mine, is the changing of our mindset. Once I put new information in my mind, I was able to see myself different. I was able to see my community different. That was demanded of me to think different and behave different. No longer was I in prison to see the world through the eyes of a Zone 8 thug. So JoJo, he was in prison to angry, hurt. And as long as he operated in that capacity, violence was his way of dealing with things. Yusef is about love, it's about hope. And that helps remedy the anger. And every time, like the work that I do, when I talk to young folks, it's a healing process. That redemption is continuing to grow and get deeper.
Talk about being a father. How do you